This is the Ed Non-Tech Podcast, conversations about education, technology, and culture with Dr. Doug Reed and Dr. Matt Stranick. Thank you for joining us. Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Matt Stranick, and this is just a quick overview of some of the features and functionality of the newly updated Ed Non-Tech Sandbox, which is associated with the Ed Non-Tech podcast, hosted by myself and Dr. Doug Reed. So to begin with, this looks a lot different than it did a week ago. If you checked it out a week ago, it was more sort of a static experience, not very interactive, and pretty ad hoc, just really more of a placeholder site. So based on some conversations that Doug and I have had, both within the podcast and also outside of the podcast, we determined it would be preferable to have this site kind of exist to show in an interactive way some of the things that we've been talking about on the podcast. So to that end, there's been some reference made to this Splot application, which has been used by BC Campus among other organizations and groups here in BC. Basically, the rationale for this, variant of the Splot, I suppose, is because I no longer work within higher education in BC, formally anyway, within an institutional context. So this is something where I thought, okay, let's see if I can, create the functionality of that application outside of, an institutional framework. So to that end, I downloaded a plugin. WordPress Forms tended to be the most well-reviewed plugin, and added that to the site, and then really scraped the site, as it were, changed the theme to Minimalist Blogger, which is the same WordPress theme used on the main podcast site, and just started building it out from there using OER, essentially using images of turkeys, again, sort of placeholder images for simplicity of messaging. So to that end, using images from Unsplash, and I also tried my hand at coming up with some images of turkeys in various styles of famous artists, including Andy Warhol and a few others, vis-a-vis the Bing image generator for AI. So again, sort of tying in some elements aesthetically as well as functionally that we've been discussing a bit on the podcast thus far. So this is just what the site looks like, just kind of, as it currently stands. It's got a couple of widgets on the top linking to pages with the WordPress form embedded, two different forms, one to submit images and one to submit sounds. And these are similar in terms of what they involve, but a bit different, as we're going to see. We also have here an interactive H5P activity, which I took from the podcast site and just kind of modified it a bit, so it's not necessarily a learning activity, but more of a functional one, so you can sort of do the course presentation slider, which I'm rather partial to, and again, turkeys abound in as much as it makes for some visually simple, but I think effective renderings, of some placeholder kind of content. I'm vegan, so I value the lives of all living animals, including those sometimes associated strictly for food. Anywho, what we've got here as well is a couple of customized QR codes, because we've again talked about using AI in different applications. So some of the AI turkeys appear as logos within the customized QR codes thinking in terms of making this site mobile friendly, trying to make as many pathways towards using the site trying to make it as easy as possible. And again, we have the QR code associated with the podcast landing page so that there's a clear and explicit pathway to the podcast, as well as just in case somehow anybody comes across this and didn't know, what that linkage was. And a couple of examples of posts. Again, placeholder content, a sample post with music associated with it, and a sample post just with an image. So here are what the forms look like when you click on them. I try to make this as accessible as possible, as easy as possible to use, just putting in your name, your email, and then the data that's required to populate a post. So I think it's important to note that the idea behind this is that anybody can contribute to the site. So anybody could come up with an AI image or an AI sound clip and contribute these to the website sort of as a place to share it. But I guess more to the point, why would anybody necessarily want to do this? It's representative of the kind of site that somebody could use or a pedagogical approach that somebody could use within their classroom or their course that they're teaching, their face-to-face class, their hybrid or their in-person class. It would be very, very easy to set this kind of thing up through a WordPress site, and all that would be needed actually would be to set up a WordPress site with the Minimalist Blogger theme, with the WordPress form plugin, and it would just be, I'd be happy to share a variant of this site and then export it as a WordPress file. So to that end, it's sort of representative of open education practices, if you will. And again, the idea here is that anybody can contribute without having to disclose anything that they don't want to, without having to sign up or provide any user data that is, not interesting to them or that they don't want to. So name, email, an optional bio, and then just a title for the creation, and then a place that's considered optional here to provide a description of what that content is. What is mandatory is uploading an image file, and there's a couple of categories here. So it is meant for AI images, but it doesn't have to be. It could be photography or just any other thing that they find relevant or interesting. And then I thought it'd be important just to have an accountability mechanism of some kind, just to certify by checking the box that the person submitting it has in fact created it, or at least has permission for it. So that would include, being able to add something like a really cool Unsplash images, which would be openly licensed, because the rights to those are available freely. They're within the public domain. Now, the form for the sound submission it's pretty much the same actually in terms of what that involves: name, email, title for the post that will appear on the site, and I've checked, and this the WordPress does enable, or it does permit rather, being able to upload an MP3. That's the only kind of sound file which I felt comfortable accepting onto the site. So I limited that to MP3s. We may get to a point where short video files, MP4s, or other kinds of media files are accepted, but this is just the early version, right? And as well, in the interest of populating the site, we want to have an image. So all the images that go on the site are actually directed into the featured image section of a WordPress post. And that's important because that will automatically appear as an image without me having to do anything behind the scenes with it. So here's just my cPanel from the good folks at Reclaim Hosting, where it distinguishes between the downloaded instance of WordPress associated with the podcast and the Sandbox. And funny story, while I was putting this latest version of the Sandbox site together, I ended up downloading a few different plugins to try and get that functionality that goes with posting just to a certain level. I basically wanted the sound file to appear within the post automatically without having to do anything else. I tried a few things out, and in so doing, it actually caused the site to freeze and effectively make it so that it just wouldn't do anything that I wanted it to. So I very easily, because Reclaim Hosting makes it easy to do, I uninstalled the WordPress application for the Sandbox, reinstalled it, and then rebuilt it from scratch. It actually didn't take all that long because, as I say, this is largely a testing environment and doesn't really have much anything to do with it, particularly besides just providing some demo content. So this is the back end now, a little bit more, going a bit further. This is the dashboard area of the WordPress site associated with the EnT Sandbox. Anybody who's used WordPress will sort of recognize this. And in terms of the feature set that I want to have here, it's got some elements here on the dashboard associated with the minimalist blogger theme. But then it also has an H5P area because I downloaded that as a plugin, and it's also got the settings, the plugin for the WordPress forums area, which I've used for the site. This is something that your own WordPress area would look pretty different, and I won't go into the weeds with what these plugins are. But just, so you can sort of see what that looks like. Now we go to the posts area within the dashboard, and we can see that I've got my two sample posts, one of them being the image post and one of them being the musical post. And again, just as kind of examples of both of those, if we now click onto the area associated with the WordPress forms plugin, we can see that my two forms, the two separate forms, are listed here. It gives me a helpful timeline of activity for the forms, which is something you probably want to have. And then it gives me each entry gets its own clickable spot here. If there were more than one, I could sort of click on the number and then get to the individual submissions. And that's important because even though the image populates automatically, the sound does not. So this is what the image form, submission looks like, the individual entry, as a form submission. And then here's what the music, the sounds one would look like. And then if I go to view this, you can see this is the data, right, that goes along with it. So the image, I don't have to do anything with for the purpose of the, getting it populated because it goes directly to the featured image of a post. But the music, in this case, a Mozart Turkish march, Turkey, thank you. Thank you for getting the pun there. And that's from Pixabay. So openly licensed musical samples. So I felt okay using that. And now this is something that doesn't automatically populate, which I tried various workarounds to get it to do so. So what it does, though, is provides an individual URL to go with the uploaded musical sample. And the uploaded musical sample URL can then be embedded into a post. So hence having to put the sound clips that are submitted as MP3s into a queue, because it means that I do have to go into the individual submission area and then get access to the URL that the forum creates to go with that, and then plug that into a post. So that's kind of the idea there. And so the musical post, you can see the image that's submitted, the Unsplash image, and then we now have all I did to this, just to show the most basic functionality, is I modify the associated post. I do a post edit and place in it the URL for the sound. So we just embed it as an audio clip from URL, and then lo and behold, right? There we go, the Turkish March. And I could have provided, the information about it, but again, that would be something that would be considered optional for anybody submitting, because again, we want to make this as barrier-free as possible. And got the QR codes that can be clicked on to go with direct access to the site for the form submission, the submission forms rather, and as well to go with the podcast itself. I suppose probably I could put URLs for these as well below here, just in the interests of making that as even further accessible. As I say, this is a demo site largely. This is there are more things that can be done here. There's probably more specific directions, more directed activities that could be placed here. I don't know that I'm going to do that anytime soon, unless Doug, makes the suggestion to do so. This is sort of just meant to show what this would look like generally as a general use. And my short video, I promised it would be short, is running close to 17 minutes. But I think all the information here has been fairly pertinent as far as just providing, what this looks like and how it came to exist from a technical standpoint, which we don't always get into in any great depth on the program. So, I guess I'll end it here. Thanks for checking this out. If you checked it out, this has just been sort of a supplement, if you will, and in the interest of sort of providing some transparency and hopefully an example of what you as an educator might want to do with your students. Potentially, you can have a little running commentary kind of assignment that goes with what went into creating certain kinds of media artifacts, or not. Anyway, take care and bye for now, and thanks a lot for checking this out.